At its simplest, sustainable finance is the process of taking environmental, social, and governance considerations into account when you're making investment decisions. The idea is that it leads to more long-term investments in green economic activities and projects. And it's happening because banks, funds, and private equity firms are raising the bar on capital allocation, meaning that the greener a company or a project or a technology is, the more likely it is to receive funding and on better fiscal terms. So companies that have immediate and credible strategies to cut carbon emissions, for example, are being rewarded, and those that don't are losing out. There's considerable attention focused on carbon emissions, with the result that high carbon assets don't attract any capital. Ironically, there's still no globally accepted definition of low carbon, and the measurement standards that do exist are really poorly defined. Even when companies do report emissions, they often don't include the entire supply chain. So some focus on scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, others focus on scope 3. There are different ways of counting emissions, total carbon emissions, carbon intensity of emissions, and carbon intensity per unit of financing. All of this means that we're speaking in different ESG languages, which begs the question, how do we know if something's actually low carbon or net zero carbon? There's also no international standard around sustainable finance. So all this means is we need to create clear and consistent carbon accounting frameworks to prevent allegations of greenwashing. We're definitely not there yet. Lithium resources are highly concentrated in the so-called lithium triangle of Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. So that means any physical disruptions or regulatory or geopolitical events in that region can have large impacts on the availability of minerals and internal prices. These three nations have talked about creating their own OPEC for lithium, and each of them has seen a revival in resource nationalism in recent years. So Bolivia, for instance, has seized tin, lead, and zinc assets over the years and renationalized them back to state control. Then you've got Chile, which is traditionally viewed as a stable operating environment, which has been much more challenging for investors of late because of plans to rewrite the constitution and change tax laws. And there have also been political calls in Chile to create a state-run lithium mining company. Argentina has said that the lithium resources of the country are at the heart of its new strategic map. And Mexico, which is the neighbor, which also is a decent lithium producer or has the resources, has gone as far as banning private miners from developing lithium at all. They aren't the only sources of lithium, of course, but they're going to play an oversized role in future supply. This isn't new for Latin America or mining in general, but I kind of like to think of it as old wine in new packaging, the traditional framework of resource nationalism wrapped up in the new packaging of energy transition.